At 86, Lee Majors finally broke his silence, revealing the emotional wreckage behind his picture-perfect marriage to Farrah Fawcett. What began as a whirlwind romance filled with love, ended in a devastating betrayal and heartbreak, followed by a silence that lasted for decades. Why did Lee never forgive her? What truly happened behind the cameras, the painful truth that the adoring public never saw? In this exclusive deep dive, we reveal the full, raw truth, from their idyllic, whirlwind romance to the devastating moment that changed him forever, leaving him with scars that never truly healed. You won't believe the personal sacrifices and profound pain that defined Lee's life after Farrah. In the 1970s, Lee Majors and Farrah Fawcett were the quintessential, golden couple, adored by millions and plastered on every magazine cover. He was Colonel Steve Austin on The $6 Million Man, a stoic hero with superhuman strength and every kid's favorite action figure, embodying strength and reliability. She was the stunning Texan blonde with the most famous, wind-blown smile in America, radiating effortless beauty. To the adoring public, they were the embodiment of perfection. Their faces illuminated magazine covers, their hands were held tightly on red carpets, and their love story seemed as meticulously tailor-made as a Hollywood script, a true fairy tale. But behind those flashing cameras, the carefully posed photos, and the public smiles, was a relationship already beginning to crack under the immense pressure of fame. They first met in the late 1960s, two rising stars on seemingly very different career paths, yet drawn to each other. Lee, born Harvey Lee Yeary, had already found steady work in television with The Big Valley, and was praised for his quiet charisma and grounded demeanor, a stark contrast to the burgeoning chaos of Hollywood. Farrah, a Texas-born beauty queen, was just beginning her ambitious journey in Los Angeles, quickly catching attention with her sun-kissed hair and irresistible girl-next-door charm, promising a bright future. Friends said the chemistry between them was immediate, almost palpable. Lee was steady, reserved, and dependable, while Farrah was full of boundless life, infectious optimism, and an undeniable zest for new experiences. They appeared to complement each other perfectly, or so it seemed to the outside world, a harmonious blend of opposites. By 1973, their whirlwind romance culminated in marriage, and for a blissful period, it genuinely seemed like a fairy tale had come true. However, almost immediately after the wedding bells faded, things began to subtly, then dramatically, change between them, driven by the relentless demands of their burgeoning careers. With Lee working grueling, physically demanding hours on the set of one of television's most high-profile shows, and Farrah intensely busy networking, diligently auditioning, and meticulously building her own burgeoning brand and empire, there was rarely any overlap in their increasingly hectic schedules. What looked effortlessly perfect in public was exhausting and strained behind their closed doors. The incessant demands of Hollywood began to pull them in opposite directions, creating not just emotional distance, but actual, physical separation. They were like ships passing in the night, seeing less and less of one another with every passing, demanding month, their lives diverging rapidly. Lee, by nature, was traditional in his values, valuing stability and shared moments. For him, a healthy marriage meant regular dinners at home, quiet evenings, or dedicated time set aside purely for each other, fostering deep connection. He yearned for stability, intimacy, and a sense of grounding. Farrah, meanwhile, was rapidly discovering a whole new kind of fierce ambition within herself, one that transcended simply being a star's wife. She desired a powerful career of her own, a distinct identity. And while Lee projected a public show of unwavering support for her burgeoning career, the behind-the-scenes reality was far more complicated and fraught with unaddressed tension. Fame was subtly, yet powerfully, beginning to muddle their intricate dynamic, altering the very foundation of their relationship. By the mid-1970s, Farrah's career was beginning to explode, truly cracking into the mainstream. Her face became instantly familiar from popular shampoo commercials, glossy photo shoots, and frequent television interviews, catching the eye of influential producers. Lee, still achieving immense prominence and widespread recognition with The $6 Million Man, observed her rapid metamorphosis with a complex mix of deep pride and growing unease. The two met infrequently, their schedules completely out of sync. He was endlessly filming his demanding show, she was endlessly filming hers, and their increasingly complex calendars simply could never align for meaningful time together. At one particularly telling point, we were told that Lee, in a desperate attempt to salvage their connection, gently asked if her management team could possibly rearrange Farrah's schedule, even slightly, so that they might have dinner together just a few nights a week. It was a very simple, profoundly reasonable request for a devoted husband to make of his wife, a plea for intimacy. Farrah, however, simply would not accept it, her focus solely on her career. She was fiercely determined not to weaken her position, to not compromise her burgeoning independence or sacrifice any momentum. Her star was undeniably on a fast track, accelerating rapidly, and she was fiercely determined to walk that path all the way to its zenith, entirely on her own terms, without any perceived hindrance. That unwavering insistence on complete independence tragically began to soul-search into the very emotional seat that once held them together, eroding their bond. Lee began to feel more and more like a third wheel in his own marriage, not just a loving spouse, but merely a forgotten partner, relegated to the sidelines of her glittering life. He confessed later that at one point, during the absolute height of her stratospheric fame, he tragically only saw Farrah 2 days a week. Even those brief moments felt snapshot-like, more like business transactions than genuine pleasure, devoid of any real intimacy or connection. It wasn't that Farrah had suddenly cooled towards him or become maliciously distant, she remained inherently warm and fundamentally kind, her inherent nature unchanged. But the woman Lee had married, the grounded Texas girl with big dreams and a down-to-earth charm, was now, undeniably, someone else entirely. Not maliciously, or with ill intent, but simply different, irrevocably altered by the machinery of fame. Fame's relentless machinery had utterly engulfed everything else in her life, consuming her identity. She had to constantly perform, meticulously build her self-image, and keep moving at a dizzying pace, with no time for pause or reflection. And Lee, who was once her grounding force, her steady anchor in a tumultuous world, was now merely a stranger, patiently waiting for a small, precious slice of her limited time, relegated to the periphery. The final, devastating blow didn't come from another fight, a heated argument, or even a career misalignment that they couldn't reconcile. It came brutally, directly, from a shocking headline in a tabloid. Farrah Fawcett had been seen, unequivocally, with another man, Ryan O'Neal. And not just any man. Ryan was a fellow actor, a major Hollywood name in his own right, someone Lee had once considered a friend, a peer within their shared professional circles. Their social circles had overlapped for years, and Lee, in his trusting nature, had never for a moment suspected that Ryan, of all people, would be the one to brazenly step into the emotional wreckage of his crumbling marriage. But he was. And even worse, far more humiliatingly, the entire world found out about the affair before Lee himself did, adding insult to profound injury. Photos of Farrah and Ryan, intimately holding hands, openly smiling at public events, and walking arm in arm, began flooding every glossy magazine and sensational tabloid, splashed across countless pages. What was once a deeply personal marital crisis had now been brutally transformed into public entertainment for millions, a juicy celebrity scandal for the masses to consume. But to Lee, it was a profound, agonizing betrayal that hit every nerve, shattering his trust and dignity. Friends close to Lee recounted that he was completely blindsided, utterly unprepared for the public humiliation. From then on, Lee Majors became a man who deliberately chose to walk away from that which he was no longer able to try to redeem, from a past he could not salvage. Farrah, meanwhile, moved on with Ryan O'Neal, and their turbulent relationship would ironically become just as stormy, if not more so, than her marriage to Lee had been. What makes Lee's enduring silence stand out, even decades later, is the steadfast and unbroken nature of that silence. He never wrote a tell-all book, never sought to sensationalize their private pain. He never went on television talk shows to air grievances, to publicly trash Farrah or Ryan, or seek sympathy. He never pointed a finger of blame at her, not even in the most subtle, indirect way, maintaining his dignity.